Hello everyone. Today I'm going to do 3 crafts for Hanukkah. We love to celebrate Hanukkah in our home. And so the first craft I want to show you is using the Cricut Mug Press. And I've been experimenting and trying this out. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on so it can be preheating. For our first project, we're going to jump real quickly into Cricut Design Space. I'm going to go to a new project, and then I'm coming over here into projects. And what I want to show you is that Cricut has so many projects that you can just have pop right up and you can go straight to making them. And so I'm going to type in over here Hanukkah, because I want to make this really fun, happy Hanukkah mug. And so I'm going to click on that so it takes me straight into the information about the mug. I'm going to select the finished size, and then you'll see that there are things that they're telling you that you need, and I'm ready, and so I'm going to go ahead to make it. So we're using a mat for our infusible ink, and you can see it's a 2-sided mug. And one thing that's really important with making the infusible ink items is to mirror your project. That is key. We want it printing in a mirror image so that when we apply it to the mug, it comes out the right way. So I'm pushing continue, and it's going to walk me through all of the settings on my machine, and we'll go ahead and get it printed. So let's take a look at the vinyl, at actually the infusible ink that we're going to be using. I have this really nice infusible ink that's just that really nice blue for Hanukkah. And so I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and let's take a look at our ink. They're always in these bags. So it comes always with a piece of parchment and a little piece of cloth and a little bit of desiccant that I don't worry about once I've opened it up. I'm actually saving these to go in a game that we like to play. And then let's get out our paper. Okay, so you can see it comes with 2 sheets. You can see that that paper is not as dark blue as it appears on the box, but it will darken up. I can see that I need 4 inches, so I'm going to measure that and see if I've got the full width, but let me see if this is 4 inches. It is, so that's actually almost 5. So I'm going to trim up this piece here, and then we'll load that onto our mat. I really have been enjoying using this this Cricut Mug Press. It has been so much fun. And so I'm getting this ready so that we can go ahead and infuse our design onto the mug. So we're loading that in. Now, while that's printing, I'm going to go ahead and get my mug ready. And so I don't want any fingerprints, lint, anything on it. So I'm going to give it a spray of alcohol. I did a little bottle with the label on it, and that's real handy. I keep that always in my craft room. So we're going to get that nice and clean. I'm going to try to avoid touching the mug part of it once I have that done. Okay, just might as well go inside. There, mug's ready. I'm going to let that dry now while that finishes printing. Now, while I'm at it, I'm also going to go ahead and figure out how much of my parchment I'm needing. So I will be using that doubled piece. So I'll be putting down our infusible ink sheet, then the parchment, and it'll make that stick down really well. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of bend this let it crack as I go. I'm going to have to be really careful because I don't want to damage this bottom blue layer, but look just how nicely that comes up. And then that's pretty fun. I think I'll save that to maybe be using for another thing. Okay, so I'm going to lay that down and I'm going to line my mug up right on the bottom there in the middle. And I'm just going to get an idea of how far around this is going to come because I want it to be even exactly in the middle. So I want to make sure that the distance between these is even. Let's go this way just a little more. Okay, that looks pretty, like we're getting pretty close. So I'm going to take that one down, lift this one up, and just bring it snugly around. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay, now I'm going to really carefully and snugly pull that around, keeping it, oh, tore my tape. I guess I was pulling it a little too much. I'm gonna really keep that snug and lined up with the bottom. So there's that, and we're just going to put that down just to get it to hold into place. And then I can bring the other side around and make sure it is lined up on the bottom of the mug. Now, when I look at that, it looks like they're a pretty good distance between those on the mug. Looks like the handle is centered. It's even at the bottom, even at the top. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and wrap that parchment butcher paper around that. Tape down one side, pull the other side tight. Make sure it's really snug. Oops. Okay, we just want to pull that around so it's nice and snug, and I cut it so it would cover the whole end of the pattern. Okay, and get that down. Now, it's okay if it pokes up a little bit above the top of the cup, but you want it to be flush to the bottom so that when we put it into the heat press, it holds just fine there. So it feels like that tape is going to hold that. I've got my parchment to protect my mug press, and so there we're ready to go. Okay, so now our light's on, and so we're going to just open up the press. And I'm going to just slide that in there carefully so I don't catch any of those papers on the side. And I'm going to line up my handle so that it's even inside of that gap. And then push it down. Oops, I've got to line it up again. Once I push it, it kind of shifts it. Okay. And then I'm going to put that tight, and then these lights start to count down. Now, while that's pressing, I'd like to show you some of my favorite things that we have for Hanukkah. We have 3 books that we really love for Hanukkah. So the first one is called 8 Wild Nights, and it is just goofy, fun. It's in a rhyme, and it's just a really fun family Hanukkah tale. So we really love that one. That one is by Brian P. Cleary and illustrated by David Udovic. We really like this one, The Parakeet Named Dreidel, about a parakeet that flies out the window, and it's just a really fun adventure. So that is by Isaac Bashevis Singer, and this particular one is illustrated by Suzanne Berkson. So we really love that one. Just a fun book. And this is one of our top favorites for so many years. This has been a favorite. And when even teaching school, I would read this to my school classes. We always celebrated Hanukkah in my classes and played the Dreidel Game. And this helped them kind of understand Hanukkah a little bit, but also had this fun twist with some monsters and goblins that come. So this is by Eric Kimmel, and this is a Caldecott honor book, and so much fun. And then my version is illustrated by Trina Hyman. And so just really fun books, fun things to share for Hanukkah. And then for really little kids, I just found this last year because I have a little niece who's small and just really loves these little books that have fun things to do. And so I bought this for Erin, and so it's just fun because you go through and there's this little, almost like a puppet, little dreidel that goes along with the book. So those are some of our favorite books for Hanukkah. Okay, it just beeped and we have a flashing light. So now I am going to open up my mug. And I'm just going to use the handle because it's very, very hot and it's steaming. So I'm going to set it right here on this dish towel that I have here on my table. And in fact, I think I'll even put some parchment under that because it is very hot and I don't want it to leak through. All right, and so that needs to cool, and then we'll do the reveal of how that looks, and I'm kind of excited to see that. And then while that's cooling, I'm actually going to move my mug press, and I'm going to use this dish towel that's under here for our next project. So I'm going to be pressing that and getting that ready to go. Okay, our mug is now cool to the touch. So we can go ahead and let's peel off some of that parchment and take off the heat-resistant tape. And let's reveal what our Hanukkah mug is going to look like. Okay, so here we go. Oh, I love it. And I was really in a debate about whether I should do, you know, the mug blue and white like this, or if I should keep it white and just do these things in blue. But I really like it. And look at that. It's that two-sided mug. Oh, I think that's great. I really love it. I really am excited about this whole mug sublimation thing. Okay, so for our next Hanukkah project, I have a really nice flour sack towel that I have pressed really well. And I want to use one of those menorahs that came out of my weeding when I did the mug. And so I saved that. The other one didn't come out very well. It was kind of messed up. And so I'm using this one. And so what I'm going to do is just put that right down on my towel. I'm putting ink side down. And so I'm just going to measure to make sure I get that centered up. And then I'm going to put a couple of other things there. So I'm going to put this at 4.5. And it's so nice to always have, I'm going to move that. It's going to have to go a little bit more. It's always nice to have one of these little flexible measuring tapes on hand. And I actually just keep it right in my Cricut machine with my Cricut tools. There are those little slots where you can keep your tools, and I just keep this measuring tape right there with them. And stay tuned for my last project, because I'll talk a little bit about what each of those symbols mean and why we use them on Hanukkah. Okay, some more measuring. Let's go 2 1/4 there and 2¼ there, good. And so this, I really love this heat resistant tape because it just makes everything stay in place. And I don't have the fancy presses that work really well with these, so I have to use my iron. And so if you're like me and you're using your iron, getting this heat resistant tape is really important because, oh, you know what I just did? I actually taped these down upside down. Make sure you put the ink side down. I know that some of you watching were probably going, what are you doing? Put the ink side down. So these are just things that, you know, I get a little distracted and have to pay attention to. And let's make sure this is, so I'm going about 3 inches up from the bottom. Okay, now we can take this one down. It got a little bit of ink on that tape. So I don't want any shadows of the ink, and it looks like that's better. So flip that over and let's get our letters back in, and then we'll get that right. 2¼ and just up a little bit, and 3 from the bottom. Okay, now got to get hay back in here. There we go. Okay, let's go over to the ironing board and we will get that ironed down, and then I'll show you what we've come up with. Okay, so here we are at the ironing board. Now I'm going to just slip in a piece of parchment so it doesn't, so the ink doesn't bleed onto the next layer. And then I've doubled a piece of parchment, and I'm going to have to go ahead with my iron. And these are supposed to take about 30 seconds at 350. Well, I don't know how hot this is, so I'm hoping it's the right heat. So I'm going to go and do part of it and hold this down for 30 seconds, and then I'll move it over to the other part of my design. You can see that I have part of it that isn't under the iron at all. So this is where having a Cricut press or one of those other like sizer presses or whatever they're called, this is where these would come in handy. But if you don't have it, I just want to show you that there are other ways to go ahead and use the infusible ink, and you can still do a lot of those projects. It just takes a little extra time, and you have to be a little bit more careful and persistent. So I'm just going to raise this up and make sure that everything is underneath there. And before I completely take off each of the little shapes, I will check to see how well it transferred, because we found out last time that if there's an area that doesn't transfer completely, you can repress if you line it up perfectly. And so it's a little harder, a little trickier, but for the clever, it can be done. Okay, now let's see. I'm actually going to set that down there, and let's check and see what happens when I just, oh, it came out. Oh, I do have a little bit of a shadow. So it looks like it worked. It's not as dark as I really was hoping, and that could be simply because I just don't have the amount of heat that I really need. So, well, oh yeah, see, that did not come out very well. So I'm wondering if I line back up, because it's still on my tape, and if I line back up really carefully, if it'll come out okay. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking about this. If I was doing this for a gift, I mean, I wouldn't give it as a gift like this, but for my family to hang on my stove and for my family to use, I think it will be okay. So we will enjoy this. And now we all learned from the experiment. And I'm seeing that, yes, I would like very much to have a press, but they're pretty expensive. And so right now, while I'm saving my pennies to get that, we'll go with the iron. So yeah, it just doesn't come out, and I think it might be a heat issue because I have a high setting on my iron, and that's all it can do. Okay, so let's go back to the table. Before we move on to our last project, I want to tell you what I learned about one of the reasons why this probably didn't come out as nicely as I wanted it to, why it's a little faded, because this dish towel is 100% cotton. And I found out that in order for sublimation and for the infusible ink to really work well, it needs to be on something that is at least 50% polyester. And so I'm thinking it probably would have come out better if it was on polyester. So we'll see on my next project, because it is partly polyester, and we'll see if we can get a little bit more bright, clear detail on that. And so good thing to know. These are, this is why I post this, because these are things I need to know. And I thought, well, if I need to know it, maybe somebody else does too. Usable, but not as clear and crisp as I would hope. So on to our next project. Okay, for our last Hanukkah project, I want to show you a bag that I got in Jerusalem when I was in Israel. And I bought this bag specifically because I wanted to keep our Dreidel game in it. And I actually have a whole bunch of Dreidels that I've collected over the years. Some of them, the simple ones, I bought in Jerusalem. And then I've just collected more and more over the years. And because I played this game with my school classes, I needed to have a lot of dreidels. But the part I like best about this is that when I was in Jerusalem, and actually all throughout Israel, I collected shekels. And so I actually would go to stores and buy shekels because I knew I wanted them for the Dreidel game. And I have just tons of shekels in here. And so we love to play the Dreidel game with shekels. Of course, you can play the game with pennies, with candies, with gelt, just any number of things, but we love to play with shekels. And so the Dreidel, of course, tells the story of Hanukkah. And let me find one that you can maybe see on camera. And so each of the letters from the Jewish alphabet represent part of the phrase that tells the story of Hanukkah. So we have a great, that's noon, miracle is gimel, happened is hey, and here is the letter sheen, because that letter represents Jerusalem. And so it really means a great miracle happened in Jerusalem. And so actually Jerusalem anciently had 3 hills that kind of made up the letter sheen. And so that's why that's the symbol of Jerusalem. So when you play the Dreidel game, you spin it. If it lands on noon, sometimes we call it none, to help us remember that nothing happens. If you land on gimel, you take all the shekels that are in the middle of the table in the pot. If you land on hay, you take half of the shekels in the pot. So you have to count and take half. And you always, if it's an uneven number, you take the lower number of shekels. And then if you land on sheen, you have to give a shekel into the pot. And so the reason that you do that is when the people would go up to Jerusalem, they would go up to the temple and they would pay a tithing or a little bit of money for the poor or to help support the temple. So when you land on sheen, you get to put an extra shekel into the pot. And so that's why we do what we do with each of those letters. So because we usually play with a lot of people, we try to keep this game in good order. So we all start with the same number of shekels. In a large group, we start with 5, maybe 7. In the family, maybe up to 10. And then the way we play it is you may not spin your dreidel until you have put a shekel in the middle. And this is really good for kids to remember little details. And so I often have them hold the shekel in their hand and their dreidel while they're waiting for their turn so that they remember to put that shekel in before they spin. Because if it's your turn, you spin your dreidel and you haven't put the shekel in the middle, you pay a penalty of an extra shekel. So because we play in large groups, we also have the rule that nobody spins their dreidel except the one whose turn it is. Otherwise, you're getting kids spinning their dreidels all over the table. The one spinning dreidel bumps into the other whose turn it is, and it's really problematic. So the rule is there's no spinning of your dreidel until it is your turn. And if you start fiddling around and spinning your dreidel and it's not your turn, you have to put in another shekel. And so once all of your shekels are gone, if you aren't able to pay that shekel into the pot to spin, you're out. But what we usually do is we have, as people are eliminated from the game, they go to another table and start a new game once 2 or 3 have been eliminated, just so everybody can keep playing and having fun. In the end, it usually ends up that one person has either all the shekels or we have a time limit, and then everybody counts up their shekels and whoever has the most wins. So we love playing the dreidel game. We actually sometimes play it on times other than Hanukkah, but certainly during Hanukkah, we bring out the bag and we just all sit around the table and kind of just have a lot of fun playing the dreidel game. So what I wanted to do is show you a way to basically make your own bag to do the dreidel game. And I found this at Hobby Lobby, and I thought this was such a great bag to use. And mine has 2 pockets, but we're just going to have one pocket in this where we put in our dreidel and our shekels or our pennies, whatever we're using for our shekels. If it's candy, of course, you'll just open that new. But what I wanted to do is also include a fun cover, kind of like this. So let's go into Design Space, and I'll show you what I found that I think is a lot of fun. I'm in Design Space once again, going back into projects, and I'm going back into that Hanukkah area. They just have so many fun, cute things. I love this sweater that is, this is how I roll with the dreidels. I think that's super clever. And so I'm going to click on that, but I want to customize it because I'm not going to be printing it on a sweater. And so I need to adjust this a little bit because this is really way too big for what I'm going to be doing. My bag is 6.5 by 7.5. And so you see that when I enter those dimensions, it automatically adjusts this. I'm going to attach it because I want it to cut out just like this. And then I've resized it. That's really what my customization has been, is to resize it and attach so it'll cut like that. And then I'm going to go right in to make it. So we'll get that made and cut out. And the really important thing here, of course, is to mirror image that print. So you've got to make sure you do that whenever you're using this infusible ink. All right. And so we'll get it printed and come right back and get this made. Okay, so I'm taking off that print. And it is very detailed. It's going to take some time to weed, I think. So I'm going to just go ahead and cut that off of the sheet here. And then this is going to take some time. So I am going to go ahead and weed this and then get back to you. Okay, this has taken a while, and I'm just finishing up the last bits of the weeding around the dreidels. So now everything is weeded, and that took quite a bit of time. And you'll see I took out a few of the items. I just felt like it was very crowded. And so I took a few of the items off because it just felt too busy to me. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and line this up on the front of the bag. I'm going to try to bring it below the zipper because when I iron this on, when I press it on, I don't want to melt the zipper. So it's going to be a little bit of a tight fit, but I love that it fills up the bag and really is reminiscent of the bag that I bought in Israel. So we're going to get that taped down. And of course, I don't have the big fancy press. And so I'm going to go ahead and do this with my iron again. And hopefully it'll turn out better than the last one. And hopefully it'll be nice and pretty. First, what I'm going to do is just slide some parchment paper right in the bag so that the ink doesn't bleed through to the back of the bag. Get that as flat as we can. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and take this, line it up very carefully. I'm going to use my heat-resistant tape and get that down, hold it down on the sides. Okay, there we go. I think that's going to stay in place really well. Now I'm going to try to keep my iron below the zipper, and it's going to take a few passes since I don't have the fancy press. I'm going to have to really be careful with this and do several passes on this. And so what I'm going to do is start from the bottom and just go on, lay it on, hold it, wait, and I'm just going to keep moving up until it's done. Okay, it's cooled a little, so let's see how this comes out. I'm actually a little nervous about it, but let's see. Oh, not too bad. Okay, that actually came out much better than the past one, and so that looks really nice. And I do like that fun idea of this is how I roll associated with the dreidels. So I see there are just a few little areas where it maybe came out a little lighter than others, but I guess that's the thing that happens when you're using an iron. But it does work and it looks nice. And so I'm excited about that. And so we can go ahead and put some dreidels in and put in some of the shekels and of course some instructions. And there you have a nice little bag for the Dreidel game. So then let's look at our Hanukkah projects and ideas. Of course, we've got the books that we really enjoy, and I will have all of these linked in the description below. And then we also have our This Is How I Roll bag for the Dreidel game. We have our dish towel with our symbols of Hanukkah. And then I think my favorite is the Hanukkah mug that's been sublimated, that now is dishwasher safe, microwave safe, because that material is actually embedded into that substrate. And so I just really like that. I hope you enjoyed these Hanukkah crafts, and I hope you have a wonderful Hanukkah.